One thing that I don't love, though, is Juan Soto. His slump continues. He looked lost at the plate against Garrett Crochet, but besides his hitting, we've seen a couple of instances of his lack of hustle over the past week. Carlos Mendoza even had to have a talk with him about getting out of the box quicker. So, Hannah, are you concerned with Soto's overall energy and body language this season? We haven't seen much of his Soto shuffle since joining the Mets.
Okay, I think this is a little bit of a tricky subject to talk about because people like to have very extreme one way or the other takes about Soto right now. I was thinking about this earlier. It feels like everyone has really camped in on either Juan Soto is unhappy to be a Met, this is a bad fit, this whole contract was a bust, or that's what are you talking about? Juan Soto's a generational hitter. He's doing just fine. Everybody stop critiquing him. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think the contract is not a bust. I think the fit is fine. I think that he did his homework this offseason. He knew this was his one chance to cash in on a generational start to a career and figure out a place that he felt comfortable. And I'm sure he chose the Mets because he wanted to be here, because he felt comfortable with the team, because he liked what they were building. And it wasn't just about the money. Also, he is getting paid very highly. However, I do think that his performance does lead me to feel like he's not himself. He's not feeling himself. He's not. That was a very passive first couple of at-bats. And I know that Crochet is a really, really tough pitcher and that patience, if not passivity, is one of Juan Soto's huge strengths. But he just does look a little bit off. There is some precedent for this. Right now, he's got a 129 WRC plus. That's his worst sort of career full season numbers. However, it's like right on par with what they were that first partial season in San Diego. And that also got off to a little bit of a rough start from a media perspective. This is a guy who's having a slump, who's not performing up to his own personal standards, even if they are pretty productive numbers. Still, he's not performing up to his own personal numbers. And he just is under a huge microscope, given the media market and given the contract that he signed. And the market and the contract might be exacerbating some of the criticisms of those slumps, but I also think it might be exacerbating it for Soto himself. We saw in San Diego, he got off to a slow start. It was maybe not a trade that he was expecting, one that he was not excited about. And then he got surly and that clubhouse got a little, bad vibesy, bad chemistry. So this is not to say like Juan Soto is a bust and the Mets were mistaken to sign him, or the Mets are a bad fit and Juan Soto made a mistake in coming here. But I do think this is a potentially fraught situation because of how much attention there is on it, and figuring out how to navigate through it without the media attention and the criticism becoming something that is making Juan Soto struggle. That feels a little bit dicey right now. I'm sort of like antsy, like gritting my teeth, watching him take every at bat. Like, gosh, I hope he just gets a huge hit here, feels great, everybody's thrilled with him, and we can put this all behind us. Because I do think that the longer the slump goes on, the greater the attention is on it, and the more pressure that puts on him, and the more kind of animosity that creates between Soto and the media, and the more attention there's going to be on, is he happy? And all that attention is probably making him unhappy. So I want him to hit so he can be happy, so everyone can talk about how he's not unhappy.
No, yeah, I think there are a lot of different variables at play here, but I think it just also comes down to the fact that there are these really high expectations that we, the media, the fans, the organization, do have on Juan Soto. Mets Hall of Famer Mike Piazza recently commented that playing for the Mets for the first time can be an adjustment for any star. But keep in mind, Soto thrived under New York's spotlight last year with the Yankees. So, JJ, is this just a slow adjustment period to a new team, or do you think something deeper might be going on here? Do you think that pressure is playing a role in Juan Soto's slump right now?
Well, when you go and sign basically an $800 million contract, there's obviously going to be pressure. However, you just nailed it, Chelsea. We all watched Juan Soto a year ago in the walk year, getting traded from the Padres to the Yankees, basically from Jump Street. Look as comfortable as can be, as swagalicious as can be. Just from day one, he was like, I'm that dude. And I think all of us kind of assumed that was the version of Juan Soto you were going to see as a New York Met from opening day against the Houston Astros, in the Subway Series against the Yankees, on and on we go. I thought the Subway Series for him was going to be a coming out party. I thought being back at Yankee Stadium, hearing 50,000 people booing him out of the building, he usually thrives off that sort of atmosphere, and it didn't happen. He went 1 for 10 in the series. He walked a couple of times in the first game against Carlos Rodon, but didn't do a whole lot. So, yeah, I do think there's something going on. I don't think it's necessarily unhappiness. I think that narrative can shift rather quickly once Juan Soto starts looking like Juan Soto. But whether it's the contract, whether it's the change in stadium, whether it's all of the media attention that he had from leaving the Yankees to going to the New York Mets, this, simply put, has not been the guy that Met fans expected to see. And his at-bats against Crochet yesterday were embarrassing. I mean, let's call it like it is. They were embarrassing. For a guy who is a top hitter in the sport, to not get the bat off your shoulder and look as overmatched as he did, I mean, those are the sort of at-bats you expect to see from an 8-hitter, from a 9-hitter, not from one of these generational talents and a guy who's profiling as a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Let me say this with Juan Soto. It's a question of when, not if, he's going to hit. We all know he's going to hit, but you want to see big-time, elite, game-changing, difference-making at-bats throughout the course of this year. And from a statistical standpoint, it's hard to imagine he's going to come close to the numbers he had with the New York Yankees. He may have a monster month or two, but I don't think we're going to be sitting there in September and October talking about Juan Soto hitting close to 40 home runs and having the same sort of statistical year. But, gang, if he gets it going and he hits later in the year, and more importantly, he hits in the postseason, you can change that narrative pretty quickly.
No, for sure. And I think Juan Soto, he comes off as a guy who seems like he just really likes to talk baseball. He likes to talk just the game. And so I think now that there are people or in the media, we are questioning, how are things going for him personally and making this transition to the Mets. Maybe that's something that he's not used to speaking about. And that could also cause some uncomfortability for him. And then now maybe he's overthinking things. The pressure is being applied a little bit more. And unfortunately for him, we're all going to compare his time with the Yankees now to his time with the Mets. That's just inevitable.